Picture this. You're a billionaire. You wake up married, but bankrupt. Your wedding ring is still on your finger, but your life is gone. Your accounts read zero. Your phone shows signatures you don't remember signing. And the woman you slept beside last night is nowhere to be found. You try to stand, your legs collapse. You reach for water, your hands shake. Then you realize something worse than theft has happened. You realize you were never the husband, you were the target. What would you do first? Would you call the police, or would you first ask what you did to deserve this? This was how Daniel Wright lost everything. But this story didn't begin with betrayal. It began with a debt that waited 10 years to be collected. Daniel grew up in the poorest neighborhoods of Atlanta, where survival meant working before the sun rose and studying by candlelight when the power got shut off. His mother, Margaret, cleaned 3 houses a day just to keep their apartment. His father left before Daniel could form memories of his face. Every morning, Daniel watched his mother's hands crack and bleed, and he made himself a promise. One day, she would never work again. By 16, Daniel was flipping small properties, abandoned houses he'd renovate with borrowed tools and sell for modest profit. By 25, he owned a logistics company that moved goods across 5 states. By 30, he was a billionaire, featured in Forbes, invited to galas where champagne flowed like water and conversations revolved around portfolios and offshore accounts. But wealth came with a cost Daniel hadn't anticipated. His marriage to Victoria lasted 3 years, 3 years of contracts disguised as romance, lawyers instead of counselors, and a divorce settlement that taught him never to mix business with emotion again. After that, Daniel stopped looking for connection. He attended church with his mother every Sunday because she asked him to, but his prayers felt hollow. At night, he returned to a penthouse that echoed with emptiness, expensive furniture arranged in rooms no one else occupied. His mother worried. Every Sunday after service, Margaret would hold his hand and say, "Son, money can't keep you warm at night. God didn't create us to be alone." Daniel would nod, kiss her forehead, and drive back to his silence. That silence lasted until the night of the Jefferson Corporate Gala in April 2023. The ballroom was filled with Atlanta's elite, developers, politicians, old money families whose wealth predated the Civil War. Daniel stood near the bar, nodding through conversations he'd forgotten the moment they ended. Then he saw her, not because she stood out, but because she didn't. Lena Moore was clearing tables near the back of the room, moving with quiet efficiency that made her nearly invisible. She wore the standard black uniform of catering staff, her hair pulled back, no jewelry, no makeup that drew attention. But what caught Daniel's eye was the small girl sitting in a chair against the wall, watching Lena work with patient eyes that seemed too old for her face. The child couldn't have been more than 7. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, waiting without complaint while adults laughed and drank around her. Something about that image, the child's stillness, the way Lena glanced back every few minutes to check on her, broke through Daniel's numbness. He approached. "Excuse me." Lena turned, her expression neutral, professional. "Yes, sir. Can I get you something?" "I was just wondering." He nodded toward the girl. "Is she okay? It's late for a child." Lena's face softened slightly, the first crack in her composure. "That's Grace, my sister. I didn't have anyone to watch her tonight. She's used to it." "Your sister?" "I'm her guardian. Our parents passed away when I was 18. Lena's voice carried no plea for sympathy, just fact. "She's good at waiting. Better than most adults, honestly." Daniel looked at Grace again. The child met his eyes briefly, then looked away. Not shy, just careful. "What's your name?" "Lena Moore." "Daniel Wright." He extended his hand. Her handshake was firm, brief. "Do you work these events often?" "When I can. The pay is decent, and I need to save for Grace's school tuition." She paused, seeming to catch herself. "I'm sorry, you didn't ask for my life story. Did you need something from the bar?"
There was something in her restraint that Daniel found compelling. Most people, upon learning who he was, shifted their demeanor, became eager, obsequious, calculating. Lena simply waited for his answer. And for the first time in a while, he felt like he was having an actual conversation, not the usual transactional kind of conversation, just something pure and truthful. "No," said Daniel. "I was just noticing." Over the following weeks, Daniel found reasons to return to the catering company's schedule. He learned that Lena worked 3 jobs: catering on weekends, administrative work during weekdays, and night shifts at a hospital doing medical billing. She never complained. When he asked about her background, she offered vague details. Grew up in rural Georgia, moved to Atlanta after her parents' car accident, took custody of Grace when she turned 18 because no other family existed. Daniel began leaving generous tips, which Lena initially refused. "I can't accept this. It's too much." "Consider it an investment in Grace's education," Daniel said. Lena looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "Why?" "Because someone did the same for me once. I'm just passing it forward." That wasn't entirely true. No one had helped Daniel climb out of poverty, but the lie felt right in the moment. Felt like the kind of thing a good man would say. And Daniel wanted to be good. He wanted to be the person who noticed the invisible woman and the patient child. He wanted to matter to someone in a way that wasn't transactional. 2 months after the gala, Daniel offered Lena as his personal assistant. The salary was triple what she made combining her 3 jobs. She stared at the offer letter for a long time before accepting. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you're disciplined. You don't ask for things. And I trust you with Grace, which means I can trust you with my schedule," Daniel smiled. "Also, you're the only person who's ever refused my money." Lena took the job. Within weeks, she proved indispensable. She anticipated Daniel's needs before he voiced them, managed his calendar with precision, and never overshared personal details. Grace occasionally visited the office after school, doing homework quietly in the corner while Lena worked. Daniel started keeping snacks at his desk for her: fruit pouches, crackers, juice boxes, small gestures that felt enormous in their simplicity. One evening in late summer, Daniel found Lena crying in the office bathroom. He'd stayed late reviewing contracts and heard the quiet sobs through the door. "Lena, are you okay?" The crying stopped immediately. A moment later, she emerged, eyes red but composed. "I'm fine. Sorry. I'll get back to work." "Talk to me. What happened?" She hesitated, then the words spilled out. "Grace's school called. They're threatening to expel her because I'm behind on tuition. I have the money now, but I missed 2 payments before I started working for you, and they're saying it shows financial instability, like she's a risk because I was poor." Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. "Which school?" "Mr. Wright, I can't—" "Which school, Lena?" She told him. The next day, Daniel made a call. The tuition was paid in full through high school, with an anonymous donation covering a scholarship fund for other families in similar situations. When Lena found out, she showed up at his penthouse unannounced. "You can't do this," she said, standing in his doorway. "I already did." "I didn't ask for this. I don't want to owe you." "You don't owe me anything." Daniel stepped aside. "Come in, please." Lena entered slowly, looking around at the expensive emptiness. "This is where you live?" "Yes." "It's lonely." The observation cut deeper than Daniel expected. "Yes, it is." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Lena said, "Thank you for Grace, but please don't do anything like that again without asking me." "I thought you needed help."
I did, but I need to know I'm not a charity case. I need to know you see me as—" She trailed off. "As what?" "As someone who matters for more than what you can fix." Daniel understood then. She wasn't rejecting his help. She was asking to be seen as equal, not rescued. It was the most honest moment anyone had offered him in years. "I see you, Lena. I see you." Their relationship shifted after that night. Conversations grew longer. Dinners became routine.
Daniel, Lena, and Grace at restaurants, where the child's delight over dessert made Daniel laugh in ways he'd forgotten he could. Grace started calling him Mr. Daniel, then eventually just Daniel, with a familiarity that felt like family. Margaret noticed. "Who is this woman you keep mentioning?" "My assistant." "Daniel Eugene Wright, don't lie to your mother. You're smiling again. Bring her to church." Daniel did. Lena attended service beside him, Grace between them, and his mother wept with joy. After the service, Margaret pulled Lena aside. Daniel watched from a distance as his mother spoke, and he saw Lena's expression shift, guarded, then uncertain, then something close to fear. Later, Margaret said to Daniel, "That girl is running from something." "What do you mean?" "I asked about her family. She couldn't keep her story straight. Where she grew up changed twice in one conversation. Her parents' accident, she said it happened in winter, then said it was summer." Margaret held Daniel's hands. "I'm not saying she's a bad person, but she's not telling you the truth. Mom, she's been through trauma. Details get confused. Or they get manufactured." Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "Be careful, son, please." "So tell me, what do you think? Do you think his mother is just trying to be protective, or could there be something fishy about Lena? Tell us what you think about this in the comments section." Daniel dismissed the warning. His mother was protective, suspicious of anyone new in his life after the divorce. But he mentioned the conversation to Rachel Adams, his lawyer and closest friend. Rachel had known Daniel since college. She'd stood beside him through the divorce, through business deals that nearly collapsed, through nights when grief for his wasted marriage made him question everything. Rachel was logical where Daniel was emotional, strategic where he was impulsive. "Do you want me to look into her?" Rachel asked. "No, I trust her." "Daniel, trust isn't the same as verification. Let me run a background check, just to be safe." "Rachel, I said no." Rachel studied him. "You're falling for her." "Maybe I am. Is that so impossible?" "It's not impossible, but it's fast. And you have a pattern of seeing people as you want them to be, not as they are." Rachel's voice softened. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to protect you." "I don't need protection. I need someone to believe I can make a good decision for once." Rachel backed off, but Daniel saw the concern in her eyes. By December, Daniel had decided to propose. He bought a ring. Simple, elegant, nothing ostentatious. He planned to ask on Christmas Eve, with Grace present, making it a moment that included the child who'd become like a daughter to him. But Lena proposed first. They were at his penthouse, Grace asleep on the couch after a movie. Lena turned to him, her face serious. "Daniel, I need to ask you something." "Anything." "Will you marry me?" Daniel laughed, thinking she was joking, but Lena didn't smile. "I'm serious. I love you. Grace loves you. We could be a family, a real one." Her voice trembled. "I know it's fast. I know it's not conventional. But life is short, and I don't want to waste time pretending I don't want this." Daniel felt his heart expand in his chest. "Yes. God, yes." They kissed, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt certain of something beyond profit margins and property deeds. He felt chosen. The engagement happened on New Year's Day 2024. Daniel's family was less enthusiastic. Margaret said, "Daniel, you've known this woman for 8 months. Please wait." His sister called from California. "Danny, Mom says you're rushing. What's going on?" Rachel was blunt. "This is a mistake. I'm telling you, as your friend and your lawyer, do not marry someone you barely know. At minimum, get a prenuptial agreement." "I'm not doing a prenup," Daniel said. "That's what ruined my first marriage. Contracts and lawyers and suspicion." "Daniel, a prenup protects both of you. It's not about suspicion. It's about—" "I said no." His voice was sharp. "I'm tired of living like everyone's out to hurt me. Lena isn't Victoria. She doesn't care about my money. She cares about me." Rachel fell silent. Then she said, "Okay, but I'm running a background check. You don't have to read it, but I'm doing it, because someone has to look out for you." Daniel hung up. The background check came back clean, mostly. Lena Moore existed. She had a social security number, a work history, tax returns, but there were gaps. Her parents' death certificate listed different names than the ones she'd mentioned. Her address history before Atlanta was vague. Rachel flagged inconsistencies, small cracks in the story. She called Daniel. "There are problems. I don't want to hear it." "Daniel, her parents' names don't match what she told you. The accident she described, there's no record of it in the county she claimed. Maybe she got details wrong. Maybe she's protecting her privacy. Or maybe she's lying." "Why would she lie, Rachel? What would she gain?" "I don't know yet, but I'm asking you to wait. Just 6 more months. Let me dig deeper." Daniel felt something harden in his chest. "You're jealous." "Excuse me?" "You've been alone as long as I have, and now that I'm happy, you can't stand it." The line went quiet. When Rachel spoke again, her voice was cold. "I've loved you like a brother for 15 years. I held you when you cried over Victoria. I've never asked you for anything except to trust my judgment. If you think I'm jealous, then you don't know me at all." She hung up. "Tell me, what do you think of this situation in the comments section? What would you have done if you were in Daniel's position? Would you have shunned your best friend off and called her jealous if you were to be in his position? And if you were Rachel, tell us how would you have reacted to his accusations?" Daniel didn't call back. Instead, he moved the wedding date up. Lena had suggested June, but Daniel insisted on March. "Why wait? Let's just do it." Lena agreed, though something in her expression flickered. Hesitation, maybe, or calculation. But Daniel didn't want to see it. He wanted the fairy tale. He wanted the ending where the lonely billionaire found love with the woman who saw past his wealth. The wedding took place on March 15th, 2024, at one of Atlanta's largest megachurches. Margaret attended but didn't smile. Rachel didn't come at all. Grace was the flower girl, radiant in a white dress, scattering petals down the aisle with careful precision. Lena was beautiful. She wore a simple gown, no veil, her hair loose around her shoulders. When she walked toward Daniel, he felt tears in his eyes. This was real. This was his second chance. The vows were traditional. Daniel promised to love, honor, and protect. Lena promised the same, her voice steady. When the pastor pronounced them married, Daniel kissed her, and the congregation applauded politely. But as they walked back down the aisle, Daniel noticed Lena's eyes. She wasn't looking at him. She was scanning the exits, the crowd, her expression unreadable. The reception was held at a luxury hotel downtown. Daniel had spared no expense. Live band, open bar, a 7-tier cake that seemed excessive even to him. He drank champagne and danced with his new wife while Grace twirled on the dance floor with other children. Around midnight, Lana suggested they go to their suite. "I'm exhausted, and I want to be alone with you."
Daniel agreed. They said goodnight to the remaining guests and took the elevator to the honeymoon suite on the top floor. The room was absurd in its luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a bed the size of a small car, champagne chilling in a bucket by the window. Lena poured 2 glasses. "To us." "To us." Daniel drank deeply. The champagne tasted slightly bitter, but he attributed it to exhaustion. He loosened his tie, sat on the edge of the bed. "Are you happy?" Lena asked. "I'm the happiest I've ever been." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Good. I'm glad." Daniel finished his glass. His head began to feel heavy, his limbs sluggish. "I think I drank too much. Lie down. I'll join you in a minute." He did. The room tilted, sounds growing muffled. Lena's voice seemed to come from far away. "Daniel? Can you hear me?"
He tried to answer but couldn't form words. His vision blurred, then darkened completely. The last thing he heard was Lena's voice, calm and businesslike. "It's done." Daniel woke to sunlight burning his eyes and a headache that felt like his skull was splitting open. He tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. His legs buckled. His hands shook so violently he couldn't grip the bedsheet. The room spun. He managed to grab his phone from the nightstand, nearly dropping it twice. The screen showed dozens of notifications, emails, texts, bank alerts. He opened the banking app first. Balance, $0. His savings account, $0. Investment accounts, $0. He scrolled through his email with trembling fingers, electronic signatures, wire transfers, property deeds transferred, business accounts drained. Everything had been moved, liquidated, redistributed to offshore accounts he didn't recognize. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Call me immediately." He tried to dial, but dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor. He slid off the bed, crawling across the carpet to retrieve it. His wedding ring glinted on his finger, the only thing left. He finally managed to call Rachel. She answered on the first ring. "Daniel? Where are you?" "Hotel. The suite. Rachel, what? Stay there. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. I'm coming." "Rachel, my accounts." "I know. I've been trying to freeze them since 4 a.m., but the transfers went through before I could stop them. Daniel, you signed documents last night, digital signatures, authenticated with your biometrics. Did you sign anything?" "No, I was drugged." The line went silent for a moment. "You're sure?" "Yes. Lena gave me champagne and then I blacked out. Rachel, she's gone. Her things are gone. Grace is gone. I'm 15 minutes away. Don't do anything."
Rachel arrived with a team. Forensic accountants, her assistant, 2 private investigators she kept on retainer for corporate espionage cases. They descended on the hotel suite like a surgical team, documenting everything, collecting the champagne glasses, photographing the room. Daniel sat on the couch in the suite's living area, wrapped in a bathrobe, shaking. One of the investigators, a woman named Lisa, took his vitals. "You need to go to a hospital. Your heart rate is dangerously high." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You've been poisoned with something, likely a combination of sedatives and muscle relaxants. We need a blood test." Rachel knelt beside him. "Daniel, listen to Lisa. We need documentation for the police report." "Police?" "Yes, you were drugged and robbed. This is a criminal case." Daniel felt his mind struggling to process. "She was my wife. We got married yesterday." "I know. I'm sorry." "Now imagine this. You slept as one of the richest men in the country, a well-established business guru, and then woke to realize that you've lost everything within the twinkle of an eye. What would you have done? And do you think Daniel deserves this? Do you think if he has heeded the warnings of his family and friends, he would have prevented this from happening? And would you have helped him after what he did to you if you were Rachel? Tell us what you think in the comment below. You might just be able to help someone make a better decision with your comments.
The hospital confirmed what Lisa suspected. Daniel had been given a cocktail of benzodiazepines and a muscle relaxant typically used in surgical settings. The dosage had been carefully calculated, enough to incapacitate him completely, but not enough to kill him. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, the doctor said. Another few milligrams and you wouldn't have woken up. Rachel filed a police report. Detectives came to the hospital, took Daniel's statement, collected evidence from the hotel. But the trail was cold before it even began. Lena Moore had vanished. The phone numbers Daniel had for her were disconnected. The apartment she'd lived in with Grace had been cleared out. No forwarding address, no trace. The offshore accounts where Daniel's money had been transferred were based in countries with no extradition treaties. The digital signatures had been authenticated using Daniel's biometric data, fingerprints, facial recognition, which meant Lena had somehow obtained those in advance. "She's a professional," one of the detectives said. "This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned, probably for months." Daniel's story hit the news within 48 hours. "Billionaire scammed by new bride" ran on every local station. The tabloids were less kind. Money can't buy love or common sense. His phone exploded with messages from people he barely knew, some sympathetic, most mocking. His business partners began distancing themselves. Investors questioned his judgment. Board members called emergency meetings to discuss leadership stability. Within a week, Daniel had resigned from 3 corporate boards and lost control of his logistics company to hostile shareholders who argued he was no longer competent to lead. Margaret came to his penthouse, which was now in foreclosure. She held him while he cried, deep, choking sobs that came from a place he didn't know existed. "I was so stupid," he said. "You warned me. Rachel warned me. I didn't listen." "You wanted to believe in love. That's not stupid. That's human." "I lost everything." "You lost money. Money comes back. You're still here. You're still my son." But Daniel didn't feel like he was still there. He felt erased, hollowed out, reduced to a headline and a cautionary tale. Rachel managed to freeze what little remained, a small trust fund that had been kept separate, about $200,000. It was enough to live on modestly, but it was a fraction of what Daniel had built. The rest was gone, scattered across jurisdictions where recovery was nearly impossible. The police investigation stalled. Lena Moore didn't exist before 2019. The identity was manufactured, purchased, complete with fake documents and a fabricated history. Grace wasn't her sister. The detective suspected Lena was either Grace's daughter or another victim, possibly trafficked. They had no leads. Daniel stopped answering his phone. He stopped going outside. His penthouse became a cell, and he the prisoner of his own shame. Margaret visited daily, bringing food he wouldn't eat, sitting beside him in silence. Rachel came less often, but when she did, she brought updates. "We're still searching. We've hired international investigators. We'll find her." "It doesn't matter," Daniel said. "Even if you find her, I can't undo what I did." "What you did? Daniel, you were the victim." "I was the fool. There's a difference." One night in late May, Daniel stood on his penthouse balcony, looking down at the street 30 floors below. The drop seemed so simple. One step and the humiliation would end. One step and he wouldn't have to see the pity in his mother's eyes or the disappointment in Rachel's. Is contemplating suicide the right thing after experience or going through something so devastating and terrible? Do you think this is going to solve Daniel's problem and put his family and friends out of the misery? Drip your comments below. Let's know who is still watching. You can also let us know where you're watching from. We'd like to know how far these stories travel. Daniel climbed onto the railing. The city spread out below him, indifferent to his existence. Cars moved through traffic. People walked dogs. Life continued uninterrupted by his suffering. He leaned forward. A voice said, "Don't." Daniel turned. Grace stood in the doorway to the balcony, small and solemn in a yellow jacket too thin for the evening chill. "Grace?" She walked toward him slowly, holding an envelope. "Lena told me to give this to you. She said to wait until you were ready to listen." Daniel climbed down from the railing, his hands shaking. "Where is she?" "I don't know. She left me at a group home 3 weeks ago. I ran away to find you." Grace held out the envelope. "Please read it." He took the envelope with trembling hands. Grace turned and walked back inside, sitting on the couch as if she'd never left, as if the last 2 months hadn't happened. He opened the letter. The letter was handwritten, Lena's script precise and controlled. "Daniel, if you're reading this, it means you survived. I'm sorry it had to be this way. I'm sorry for a lot of things, but mostly, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth sooner. 10 years ago, you impregnated a girl named Elena Martinez. She was 17. You were 24. You met her at a party in Athens, Georgia. You were there for a business deal. She was a high school senior working catering to save for college. You slept with her once. You never called her again. Elena discovered she was pregnant 2 months later. She tried to contact you. You blocked her number. She wrote letters to your business address. You threw them away. When she was 8 months pregnant, she showed up at your office. Your assistant had her escorted out by security. Elena gave birth alone. She named the baby Grace. Elena worked 3 jobs to support Grace, just like I told you I did. Except in her case, it was true. She never finished high school. She never went to college. She spent 7 years raising your daughter while you built your empire and married a woman who wanted your money more than your heart. I know this because Elena was my best friend. We met at the hospital where I worked. She did medical billing at night, just like I told you. We became close. She told me about you. She showed me your picture. She said she'd stopped hating you because hate takes energy she didn't have. Elena died 2 years ago. Cancer. She couldn't afford treatment. By the time the diagnosis came, it was too late. I held her hand when she passed. Grace was 5 years old. Before she died, Elena made me promise to take care of Grace, and she made me promise something else, to make you pay. Not with your life. She didn't want that. She wanted you to understand what it feels like to lose everything, to be abandoned, to realize too late that the choices you made mattered. I didn't plan to fall in love with you. That wasn't part of the arrangement. But the more time I spent with you, the more I saw the man Elena described, the one who could have been good if he'd made different choices. I saw your loneliness. I saw how much you wanted to matter to someone. And I saw Grace light up when you smiled at her. I saw her call you Daniel like you were her father, and I realized I couldn't do it. But by then, it was too late. I was trapped. The person who hired me to destroy you wasn't Elena. Elena never knew I was planning this. The person who hired me was your ex-wife, Victoria. Victoria found me a year after Elena died. I was desperate, drowning in Elena's medical debt and trying to keep Grace out of foster care. Victoria offered me $500,000 to seduce you, marry you, and take everything. She provided the drugs, the digital access to your biometric data, the offshore accounts. She planned everything down to the minute. And she also had insurance, photographs of me with Grace, documents linking me to Elena, evidence that could send me to prison for fraud and kidnapping if I didn't follow through. She owned me.
So I did it. I married you. I drugged you. I signed the documents that transferred your wealth to accounts Victoria controlled. And then I ran, just like she instructed. But I did one thing Victoria didn't know about. 3 months before the wedding, I contacted Rachel. I told her everything. I gave her copies of Victoria's communications, recordings of our meetings, proof that Victoria was the architect of this entire scheme. I told Rachel to wait until after the wedding to act, because Victoria was watching me, and if I deviated from the plan, she'd destroy both me and Grace. Rachel didn't trust me. She thought I was setting another trap, but she kept the information, and she's been building a case against Victoria since January. By now, Rachel has arrested Victoria. The evidence I provided, combined with her own investigation, should be enough to convict Victoria of conspiracy, fraud, and extortion. The money Victoria stole will be recovered, most of it anyway. Rachel will make sure of that. As for me, I'm turning myself in. I can't keep running, and I won't let Grace grow up thinking this is how you survive. I've arranged for her to be placed with a temporary guardian until the courts decide what happens next. I'm hoping that guardian will be you. Grace is your daughter, Daniel. I had a DNA test done months ago. It's enclosed with this letter. Elena told me the truth, but I needed proof before I could tell you. She deserves to know her father. She deserves better than what I can give her.
I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that the woman who fell in love with you was real. The moments we shared, the dinners, the laughter, the nights when you told me about your childhood, those were real. I wasn't pretending then. I'm sorry I couldn't save you from this. I'm sorry I couldn't save Elena. I'm sorry I couldn't be the person you thought I was. But maybe in some small way, I can still do the right thing. Take care of Grace. She's innocent in all of this. She's brilliant and kind, and she deserves a life that doesn't revolve around debts and revenge. Give her the life Elena couldn't. Lena. So, tell us, who do you think made the worst mistake? Daniel or Lena? What do you think about Grace being Daniel's daughter? Is it another scheme to ruin him, or a blessing that would uplift him? Daniel read the letter 3 times before he could process it. Then he looked at Grace, who sat on the couch watching him with those patient, ancient eyes. You're my daughter. Grace nodded. Lena told me. She showed me pictures of my mom and you. She said you didn't know about me. I didn't. If I had, Daniel's voice broke. I would have been there. I swear I would have been there. I know. Lena said you weren't a bad person, just a careless one. The truth of that hit Daniel harder than any theft. He had been careless. He'd slept with a girl whose name he barely remembered, then discarded her when she became inconvenient. He'd convinced himself it didn't matter because it was just one night, just one mistake in a life full of calculated decisions. But it had mattered. It had mattered enough to kill Elena. It had mattered enough to orphan Grace. It had mattered enough to set in motion a revenge plot that destroyed him 10 years later. Daniel sat beside Grace on the couch. I'm sorry. For your mother. For not being there. For everything. Grace leaned against him. Can I stay with you? Yes. If the courts allow it, yes, absolutely. Rachel called the next morning. Daniel, we arrested Victoria last night. She's being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and identity theft. Lena turned herself in this morning. She's cooperating fully. Is Lena going to prison? Probably, but with her cooperation and the fact that she was coerced, she might get a reduced sentence. The prosecutor is considering the circumstances. Rachel paused. Daniel, there's a DNA report attached to Lena's confession. Grace is your biological daughter.
I know. She's here with me. She's... What? How? Lena sent her, with a letter explaining everything. Daniel's voice was steady now, clear. Rachel, I need you to file for emergency custody. I'm her father. I want to take care of her. Daniel, are you sure? This is... I've never been more sure of anything. The custody hearing took place in June. Margaret attended, weeping quietly in the gallery. Rachel presented the DNA evidence, Elena's death certificate, and documentation of Grace's time in foster care after Lena's arrest. The judge reviewed everything carefully. Mr. Wright, the judge said, you were unaware of this child's existence until recently. Yes, Your Honor. I take full responsibility for that. I should have been more responsible 10 years ago. I can't undo the past, but I can be the father Grace deserves now. The judge granted temporary custody, with a follow-up hearing scheduled for 6 months later to assess Grace's well-being and Daniel's fitness as a parent. Daniel took Grace home that day, not to the penthouse, which had been sold, but to a modest townhouse Rachel had helped him purchase with the remaining trust fund. It had 3 bedrooms, a small yard, and no view of the city skyline. It felt like enough. Grace chose the room with windows facing east so she could watch the sunrise. Daniel bought her a desk, a bookshelf, and let her pick paint colors for the walls. She chose yellow. Like my mom's favorite color, she said.
"Tell me about her," Daniel said, and Grace did. She told him about Elena's laugh, about how she sang off-key in the car, about how she worked late but always made time to read bedtime stories. She told him about the hospital room where Elena died, about how Elena held her hand and promised everything would be okay. "Was Lena there?" Daniel asked. "Yes, Lena stayed with us the whole time. She held my mom's other hand." Grace looked at Daniel. "Lena's not a bad person. She was just trying to keep a promise." "I know." Victoria's trial was swift and public. The evidence was overwhelming. Communications with Lena, financial records showing payments, testimony from Rachel about Victoria's history of vindictive behavior toward Daniel. Victoria maintained her innocence, claiming she'd been framed, but the jury didn't believe her. She was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Lena's trial came 2 months later. She pled guilty to fraud and conspiracy, but the judge took into account her cooperation, the coercion she'd experienced, and her genuine remorse. She was sentenced to 5 years, with the possibility of parole after 3. Daniel attended the sentencing. He sat in the gallery beside Grace, who insisted on being there. When the judge asked if Daniel wanted to make a victim impact statement, he stood. "Your Honor, I don't feel like a victim. I feel like someone who finally woke up." Daniel looked at Lena, who sat at the defense table, her face pale and drawn. "What Lena did was wrong. I'm not excusing it. But she also gave me something I didn't know I'd lost. The truth. And she gave me my daughter." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not asking for leniency. That's not my place. But I want the record to show that forgiveness is possible, and that people are more than the worst thing they've ever done." The judge nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Wright." After the sentencing, Daniel and Grace left the courthouse together. Reporters shouted questions, but Daniel ignored them. He held Grace's hand, and they walked to the car in silence. "Do you still love her?" Grace asked as they drove home. The question caught Daniel off guard, but he considered the question carefully. "I love the person she tried to be. I don't know if that person was real." "I think she was real. I think she just got confused about which version of herself she was supposed to be." Out of the mouths of children, Daniel thought.
Life became smaller, quieter, better. Daniel enrolled Grace in a good public school, joined the PTA, learned to make bag lunches and braid hair. He attended every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every soccer game. He was present in ways he'd never been before, not because he was trying to atone, but because he finally understood what mattered. Margaret helped. She taught Daniel to cook, to grocery shop on a budget, to find joy in ordinary moments. "This is what I wanted for you all along," she said one Sunday after church. "Not the penthouses and the galas. This, family." Rachel visited often. She and Daniel never spoke about the words he'd said during their fight, but the friendship repaired slowly, carefully. She brought Grace books, took her to museums, became the aunt Grace had never had. One evening, a year after the trial, Daniel received a letter from Lena. It was brief. "Daniel, I heard you got custody. I'm glad. Grace writes to me sometimes. She tells me you're teaching her to ride a bike and that you make terrible pancakes but excellent grilled cheese. I'm doing okay here. I'm taking college courses through a prison education program. Maybe I'll finish the degree Elena never got to start. I don't expect you to write back. I just wanted you to know that watching you become the father Grace needs has been the only good thing to come from this mess. You're not the man you were 10 years ago. Maybe I'm not the woman I was a year ago either. Take care of her. Lena." Daniel read the letter twice, then filed it away. He didn't write back, but he didn't throw it away either. Grace asked about Lena occasionally. "Do you think she'll come back when she gets out?" "I don't know. Would you want her to?" Grace thought about it. I think I'd want to see her, to thank her for taking care of me when my mom died, but I don't think I'd want her to stay. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. As the months passed, Daniel realized something unexpected. He was happy. Not the desperate, grasping happiness he'd felt with Lena when he thought he'd finally found what he was missing, but a steady, quiet contentment. He woke up each morning with purpose, not to build wealth or prove his worth, but simply to be present for Grace, to pack her lunch, to help with homework, to listen when she talked about her day. The wealth never fully returned. Rachel recovered about 30% of what had been stolen, enough for Daniel to invest modestly and rebuild a comfortable life. He started a small consulting business, advising other entrepreneurs on logistics and real estate. The work was fulfilling in ways his empire building never had been. One day, Grace came home from school with a project: create a family tree. She showed Daniel the paper, carefully drawn with branches and leaves. At the top, she'd written Elena's name, below it, her own, and beside her name, she'd written Daniel's. "Is this okay? Can I put you here?" Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. Yes. Absolutely. Grace added one more name off to the side. Lena, with a dotted line connecting her to Grace. She's not exactly family, but she's not exactly not family either. That's fair. On the second anniversary of Elena's death, Daniel and Grace visited her grave. It was a modest headstone in a cemetery on the outskirts of Atlanta, purchased with money Daniel had quietly paid for after learning Elena had been buried in a pauper's section. Grace placed flowers on the grave. "Hi, Mom." "I'm okay. Daniel's taking good care of me. I'm in 4th grade now. I like math and reading. I'm learning to play piano. I think you'd be proud." Daniel stood back, giving Grace space. But when she finished, she took his hand. "Will you say something?" "I don't know if I have the right." "Please."
Daniel knelt beside the grave. "Elena, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every choice I made that hurt you. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry you had to do this alone." His voice cracked. "But I promise you, I swear on everything I am, I will spend the rest of my life making sure Grace knows she's loved. She'll never doubt that. She'll never wonder if she matters, because she does. She's everything." Grace hugged him, and they stayed there for a long time, kneeling in the grass beside the grave of the woman who'd given Grace life and the debt that had changed Daniel's. 3 years after the wedding that destroyed him, Daniel received a call from the parole board. Lena was eligible for early release due to good behavior and her continued cooperation with authorities. They wanted Daniel's input as a victim in the case. "Do you object to her parole?" the officer asked. He thought about it. He thought about the woman who'd drugged him, who'd stolen everything, who'd left him broken. But he also thought about the letter, about Grace's words, about the complicated truth that people can be more than one thing at once. "No," Daniel said. "I don't object." Lena was released 4 months later. She didn't contact Daniel, and he didn't reach out. But Grace wrote to her, and Lena wrote back, brief letters about books and college and the life she was trying to build as a convicted felon with a second chance. One day, Grace asked, "Do you think you'll ever see her again?" "Maybe, someday, if she wants to see me." "And if she does?" "I'd tell her thank you." "For what?" "For showing me what really matters. For giving me you. For teaching me that the debts we ignore don't disappear. They just wait until we're ready to pay them." Grace nodded, satisfied. "Do you think Lena deserves a second chance and a place in Daniel's life? Do you think they'll eventually get back together, or they'll both move on with their lives?" Rachel came over that evening for dinner. She'd started dating someone, a kind, steady man who worked in education and made her laugh. She seemed lighter, happier. "You did good, Daniel," she said, watching Grace help with dishes. "You took something terrible and made it mean something." "I had help." "You did the work," Rachel smiled. "Elena would be proud. I think even Lena would be proud." Daniel looked at Grace, who was singing off-key while scrubbing a pot, and he thought about Elena doing the same thing years ago in an apartment he'd never seen while raising a daughter he'd never met. He thought about the choices that ripple forward, the debts that come due, the lives that intersect in ways you never expect. He thought about the man he'd been, careless, arrogant, certain that wealth insulated him from consequence. And he thought about the man he'd become, humbled, present, finally understanding that love wasn't something you found or lost, but something you built, carefully, deliberately, day by day. The wedding ring was long gone, sold to pay for Grace's school supplies in those first desperate months after the trial, but the lessons remained. The debt had been paid, not in money, but in transformation, not in revenge, but in responsibility. Daniel watched his daughter laugh, watched Rachel joke with Lena, felt his mother's presence in the recipes they cooked and the prayers they said before meals. This was wealth. This was what mattered. And for the first time in his life, Daniel Wright felt rich. The debt you ignore today will return with interest, and the truth you avoid will one day demand payment. But if you're willing to face both, you might discover that what you thought was destruction was actually the beginning of something real. Tell us, are you satisfied with how everything eventually turned out? Do you think something else should have happened? Let us know in the comment below. And if this story moved you or you find it interesting and worth your time, make sure to subscribe and please give this video a thumbs up so more people can see it.